Okay, this is going to be a little tutorial on how to edit your expansion image in Photoshop, getting ready to post it into Blackboard. The first thing we want to do is set up the workspace. If you go up to this little tab in the upper right hand corner and you click on the down arrow, you'll see that there's a series of different workspaces. For what we're doing for black and white, Essentials is just fine. I had suggested working in painting this morning, but we don't really need all this. This is brush presets, color, and all that. You can actually bring all this stuff into Essentials if you need to. But let's just go back, keep it simple. Let's go back to Essentials. And the only thing that you should see are the Layers panel here. If you don't see it, go to Window and make sure Layers checked. The other thing is make sure that the tools are checked, which is all this stuff here. The other thing would be the interface, like what is the value you want the background of the working space to be. So go to Photoshop CC, go to Preferences, and go to Interface. I've selected the mid-tone gray, but you can select this dark gray or you can set black. You can also set this lighter gray, whatever works for you. Okay, so I'm going to use this mid-tone gray, then hit OK. All right, so let's bring a file in. So there's many ways of bringing files in, but this is, once we're in here, this is a good way to do it. Go File and then go Open. And then you'll see the image on the desktop. So I had emailed it to myself and then I downloaded it to the desktop. Click on it and then select Open. And there it is. It opens up into your working space. Okay. One of the things we should do right off is make a copy of this image, because there are a variety of options that are not available if we're working on just the background. You can see that by this little lock here. So what we want to do is, there's a couple ways to do this. One is to just, with the mouse, click, hold, and then drag down to this little image right next to the trash can. The other way to do it is to go to Layer and then just go Duplicate Layer. And then you can give it a name, Background Copy 2. We already have one background copy. Hit OK. All right. Now I don't really need two of those, so let's delete one of them. So if I'm selected on this, I can just hit delete and it'll delete it. The other thing you can do is you can go Layer and you can go Delete Layer. So that'll do it too. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm working on the layer that's selected. So the blue highlight means the background layer is selected. I actually want to work on my copy. If you click on the little eyeball here, that means this is no longer visible, so only one of them is showing. So now we're going to work on this, and now it's completely editable. The first thing we want to do is change it to grayscale. Now I realized I did something wrong. You'll see what's going to happen here. I should have changed it to grayscale first, but we can still do this. Go to Image, Mode, and then Grayscale. The default should be RGB. Make sure you're at 8 bits channel. That's going to be better for us. So we're going to go to Grayscale, and it's going to say change modes can affect the appearance of layers. Merge layers before mode changes. You could do that. I'm going to say don't merge and then discard. Okay, so now I'm still on the copy layer. Okay, let's look at the image size. If we go to image size, we can see that it's about 7.62 megabytes. If I go back, I'm going to go edit, I'm going to step backwards. All right. I should be in RGB. Let's look at the image size now. So when it comes in with all that color information, it's really large. It's 22.9 megabytes. So by reducing it, by going to grayscale, that reduces the file size. And we want to do that because when we're working in Photoshop, the larger the file, it'll slow it down. But the other thing is that it might slow the processing down. But the other more important reason is when we go to post in Blackboard, we want it to be 5 megabytes or smaller. Okay, so let's do some adjustments here. We're going to crop it, and so we're going to go to the crop tool. And when we do that, you're going to see a set of guidelines, drop-down boxes appear, dialog boxes. And what may happen is that what may appear is, depending on who's been working on it, a variety of these. We want to do width times height times resolution. If there's a bunch of numbers in here, go ahead and hit clear, and we're going to put our own dimensions in. So we want our cropping to be about the same ratio as our original picture frame, and our picture frame was 12 inches by 18 inches. So let's reduce it by half. So we're going to make our width 6 inches and our height 9 inches, and we're going to work at 200 resolution. So to make sure it's 6 inches, you have to type in 6 IN and then 9 IN, and then the resolution is 200. Now, if yours came in as landscape, you just reverse this. So the easy way to do is you could just type it in and then hit the little arrows going in opposite directions, and it'll change the orientation. So if you didn't get the orientation right, you don't have to retype this, you just flip them. Okay, so this came in pretty good. Now if I wanted to get a little closer and give myself less negative space around the image, I could do that. I also want to move this, and kind of center the image, and I can do that by, as long as this little arrow shows up, it allows me to move the image within the frame. So I want to relatively center it. That looks good. I'm going to hit return, and it's going to crop it. Now it made it a little bit smaller, so just to make it, to zoom in, on the Mac I'm going to hit Command plus. On the PC you would hit Control plus, and that'll make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so let's go to image size again just to check to see if we did everything right. So there we go. It's 6 by 9 at 200. It's still 2.6 megabytes. That is perfect. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to get any gray or gradation in the background out of here. So depending on the lighting conditions, the settings on your camera, all those kinds of things, it may not be perfectly black and white. This came out pretty good. The lighting must have been just right. But I'm going to go ahead and adjust it and make it absolutely black and white. So what I want to do is go to Image, then go to Adjustments, and then I'm going to go to Levels. And it brings up this what's called a histogram. And this is a really good quick check to see if your levels are correct. For any image that you're working with, you're going to have sort of the dark end of the scale, the lightest end of the scale, and then what are called the midtones. So what I want to do is I want to bring the scale right to the end of the histogram. That's kind of optimum. For us though, we can see that it's still not super high contrast, so I want to make the background really white, so I'm going to bring this in. See that? And then it may have also lightened up some of the black areas, so I want to make sure they're absolutely black. So I'm going to take the lower end and bring that in. See that? Now that's black and white. Okay, so then I'm going to hit OK. So that looks pretty good. Now, one of the things, there's a signature here. Nothing wrong with that, except it's a little distracting, so we can erase it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the eraser tool, which is over here, and we're going to select the eraser tool. And you'll see that a little number appears. And that is the diameter in pixels of the eraser tool. If that's a little too big, I can reduce the size. See that? It gets a little bit smaller. Hardness means if I've got it way up here, that means it's super, super hard. It's going to give me a really hard edge. Like if I just did that, you can see it gives me a really super hard edge. I can always go edit, step backwards, and it will change that. So um, let me just show you what happens if I had it on hardness down here. See that? Look how soft that is. So that means it's a really soft erasing. So for what I want to do, I want to make a really crisp edge. So I'm going to make the hardness at 100%. I don't really need it this big. I'm going to come down here. There it is. Don't worry about that if that shows up as transparent. What it means is there's nothing back there. So if I click back on, look at that. That is that bottom layer. So I've adjusted only the top layer. So I'm going to click that off. I'm going to reduce this. And that looks pretty good. So all I need to do is save it and get it ready for Photoshop or for the journal. So one of the things I want to do, this is generally good practice. It's probably not that important for this. I'm going to go File, Save As, and you see there's the name and it says .psd. That means it's a Photoshop file. That is not something that we can post into the Blackboard journal. We need a JPEG. So what you want to do is select JPEG. And you'll see that it says JPEG. Now, don't type the file extension in because that actually doesn't work. So you really need to select the mode that it's going in. And there's several different options. There's large format, there's GIFs, there's what's called EPS. There's a whole variety of ways of saving these. And we'll talk about some of those options later through the semester. But for right now, let's just save it as a JPEG. If we wanted to save all the layer information, we'd save it as a PSD file. And again, that's not a bad idea. So I'm going to save. My default is to the desktop, and all the computers in the school go to the desktop. If it doesn't go to the desktop, check your downloads folder. It might be in there. Now I'm going to save it again, and this time I'm going to go File, Save As, and this time I'm going to save it as a JPEG, and that's what I'm going to post. But I need to give it a file name that Blackboard's going to recognize. And it has problems with these kinds of files. So I'm just going to call it, and see I've left the extension on there. I haven't gotten rid of that. I'm going to call it sim-1, sim_1. Save. Okay. And that's it. It's ready to post. And you've understood how to, we've posted images in Blackboard before. You can look at the